Hello everyone, how are you doing today? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel where I want to continue some of the discussion about this news of Breath of the Wild 2 getting delayed to spring of 2023. We of course discussed it in my last video. It's a big deal. A lot of people have opinions, a lot of people have thoughts. I shared my own, and it was a big move of Nintendo to do with really their big tentpole game that was initially supposed to release this year. But now we know it's going to be played sometime in 2023. But as we know, it is not the only huge first-party Nintendo game that still is mysterious and that still has no official, actual, real release date. That other game, of course, is, in no surprise, Metroid Prime 4. Now, the reason that I wanted to talk about both of these games today is not just the obvious fact that I'm a huge Metroid fan, so I'm always excited for any reason to talk about Metroid Prime 4, but it's partially in reaction to some of the initial conversation that I saw going around out there. Not a huge conversation, but I did see quite a few people talking about this. And it was this idea, again, in reaction to the delay of Breath of the Wild 2 until 2023. It was some people talking about whether or not we would actually end up playing Metroid Prime 4 before we play Breath of the Wild 2. And now I know that initially we probably all stop and think, wait, there's no way that that's going to happen. We've seen way more of Breath of the Wild 2 than we have of Metroid Prime 4. In fact, we've seen none of Metroid Prime 4. And we've also been told that that game had to get scrapped and restarted only 3 years ago. And so it might seem initially like a crazy thought for us to play Metroid Prime 4 before Breath of the Wild 2. And while I will tell you that I actually agree with you, I do think it's worth exploring the slight possibility of how that could actually happen. Before we jump any deeper into the Breath of the Wild and Metroid Prime 4 topic, I like to remind you guys I'm always trying to grow the channel here on Rule of Two Review. I am less than 2,000 subscribers away from 20,000 subscribers, which I really hope to hit sometime this year. I cover all things Nintendo and all things Metroid and Zelda and all things gaming. So as you watch this video, if you seem to like what I'm doing and what you hear, then I hope you will consider subscribing to the channel. Oh man, I just realized that I recorded the whole intro of this video without the ceiling light on my room on, and I feel like that makes the lighting better on my videos, so I don't know how that's going to turn out for the intro. I guess we'll see in post when I'm editing this video. But I fixed the problem. That light is on. Anyway, let's get back to the goods. So here's the thing. I'll remind you of the opinion that I just shared a minute ago, which is that I personally do believe that Breath of the Wild 2 will be the game we more than likely play before Metroid Prime 4. And there's a lot of reasons that I feel that way, and I think most of them are probably fairly obvious because I think that most of you guys agree. In fact, I know you guys agree because the night before actually posting this video, I put up a poll on YouTube where I asked you guys, which game do you think we will play first, Breath of the Wild 2 or Metroid Prime 4? And overwhelmingly, everyone has responded Breath of the Wild 2. There is still a somewhat sizable amount of people that feel like Metroid Prime 4 has a chance of being the game that releases first, which I do think is interesting and definitely nice to see. But at the end of the day, I feel like most of you guys do, that Breath of the Wild 2 makes a lot more sense. It's a game that we've actually seen. We've seen 2 teasers, 2 trailers. We've seen some actual gameplay. We still don't have a name for the game, and we still don't have a firm release date. But the fact that we've been given 2 release windows so far definitely makes it feel more real than Metroid Prime 4. And while I'm more excited for Metroid Prime 4, it's hard to deny the fact that Zelda just feels farther along than Metroid. But I still don't feel like Metroid Prime 4 is a total loss. I actually think that there's a couple of options that may happen with the eventual release of Metroid Prime 4. I'm not yet even talking about when we'll see the game and get a release date and a trailer and maybe an official title or anything. I'm just literally talking about the day that it releases and we can actually play that game with a controller in our hands. And one of them would be the circumstances of how I think the game has a slight chance of releasing before Breath of the Wild 2. So here's the thing. I'm going to remind you of what I theorized and predicted on my last video about the delay of Zelda. And it's that, personally, while I think there is a chance that Nintendo sticks to the spring 2023 release date for Zelda, I kind of more lean towards them probably delaying it at least one more time. If I was to put any sort of guess or wager on when I think Zelda will actually release, I'm actually predicting holiday next year. holiday 2023, not spring, although I want that to be the case, but I feel like there's a chance it ends up moving back to just holiday next year. So, you know, it might stick to spring, it might move to holiday, it might slip again to 2024. Anything is an option. I'm just telling you that my personal guess right now, while the news is very fresh, is one more delay to holiday of next year. Now, when it comes to Metroid, I kind of think that around holiday next year is also incredibly possible for that game. And I know that until we actually see anything from Nintendo about that game, I think everyone's default mode of thinking about Metroid Prime 4 is that it's a million years away. At all times, any given day, every random person just thinks Metroid Prime 4 is 100 years away. And I understand it because it's been a frustrating, emotional, rocky roller coaster when it comes to that game. Trust me, you guys know me, I'm the biggest Metroid fan on the planet. I want this game almost more than I want breath in my own lungs. And so I too have gone on that emotional journey, right? That's why I'm the only person that makes regular videos finding any excuse to talk about that game for the last 3 to 5 years because I'm so freaking ready to play it. But we can't forget that at the end of the day, there are still real life human beings that for years have been cranking away at that game. And honestly, eventually, as impossible as it may feel, the game's gonna come out. We're gonna see a trailer, we're gonna see cutscenes, we're gonna see Samus, we're gonna get a release date, and then eventually it just will be released. It's not actually gonna take 100 years, even though many of us feel that way because of the turbulent development cycle of that game. And so I think we have to then look at what happened last month when Retro Studios on Twitter updated their banner to a never-before-seen picture of Samus in the shadows. And you know, I made 2 very long videos, my own solo video and then a 1-hour podcast with Super Metal Dave and Andre's Restart talking about that picture. And it may seem silly because it's easy to write off as just a dumb picture that maybe means nothing. I personally, as a Metroid fan, am just going to tell you, I don't think that was nothing. I think that was very purposeful to prepare us for the fact that this year, now I'm just only predicting and guessing, okay? But I am guessing that this year, 2022, we will see Metroid Prime 4. I think this is the year for the update. I think that that picture on Retro's Twitter banner basically essentially confirms that. Obviously, E3 could be the ideal time to see it, but it might even happen after E3. And so I don't think it's impossible. In fact, I would even say it's likely that we maybe see Metroid Prime 4 this year and that it ends up releasing next year. And if that happens, are we looking at 2023 being the release year for both Zelda and Metroid? I kind of think it's pretty possible. Now, of course, you guys know that I'm also somebody who believes that next year is probably when we're going to see the next Nintendo Switch or the next Nintendo console, some sort of next-gen leap in technology. I'm personally predicting is next year. I could be wrong. I say that every time, and you guys hear me say it all the time. But whether or not I could be wrong doesn't matter because my prediction and guess is that it will be next year. And so then we start to talk about Zelda and or Metroid being a cross-gen release to help launch that next console or release within its launch window. Many more people are talking about it now because of the delay of Zelda, and I obviously think that there's something to that. How things line up, it's too early to know for sure, but I think it's all possible. I think we're seeing the stars align for a new piece of Nintendo Switch hardware and Zelda and Metroid to all potentially be releasing very close to each other. And if that's the case, then we start to wonder, what if these two games release within a couple of months of each other? Metroid Prime 4 and Breath of the Wild 2. It is not impossible for that to happen. Is it a lock? No. But is it possible? Yes. And so at this point, to kind of wrap the video up with this last idea, I think it's worth noting that we're at the point where we might be splitting hairs over which game we might play first. Because one of the many scenarios, not only scenario, but many scenarios, again, people have to be reminded about this because they react crazily to video game predictions sometimes. One of the many scenarios I see playing out that is possible would be if, I don't know, let's say Metroid Prime 4 releases in like September or October, and maybe Breath of the Wild 2 releases in November. I mean, companies, even Nintendo, have released big games in fairly close proximity to each other. And so, if a new console is supposed to release next holiday, maybe both of these games release around that same time. Or maybe they release very far apart. Maybe Zelda sticks to spring, and then Metroid Prime 4 becomes the big holiday title next year. How and when that might line up with the next-gen console, tough to say. Maybe Metroid Prime 4 becomes that, and then they release like a next-gen version of Breath of the Wild 2 several months later. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on all of these theories, and none of these things happen. I mean, I'm not oblivious to the fact that any of these things I'm guessing could be wrong. But for the sake of conversation and sticking and committing to my predictions, I think that there's a great chance that 2023 becomes the Metroid year, the Zelda year, and the new Switch year. And so anything is possible. And so, to come back and wrap this up with the original thesis and question to this video, which game will we play first, Metroid or Zelda? I don't truly know which I feel, but I am leaning towards Zelda. However, I think they also may release so close to each other that it wouldn't even matter. Because if the games are only 1 month or 2 months apart, does it really matter which one we play first? I think we more think about that question if they're like a year apart or longer. But if they release around the same time, who even really cares, right? Either way, this is just myself as one fan guessing and speculating and theorizing, and I think there's a chance that 2023, boy, it could be hitting us with a bunch of great Nintendo stuff. So these are my thoughts, theories, and predictions. I do want to know, what do you think about my thoughts and theories, and what are your own thoughts and theories? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you maybe meet me somewhere in the middle? Whatever you think about it, talk about it below. And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video.